Good morning, Andrew Cooper.
Good morning, brother. Breakfast ball, baby. Let's go.
Breakfast ball. It is, for those listening to the podcast, it's 8:43 in the morning on a Sunday. Andrew Cooper has a 10-month-old, so he's already up. I'm up. I'm going to a bat mitzvah, and then I got to drive to Maine. So this is an action-packed day. And I call my mom and I said, "Hey, can I do this show with Andrew Cooper?" She's like, "Who's that?" I'm like, "Never mind." At your new house, and I said, "Well, can we just do a quick internet test?" And she goes, "Oh, well, Matt, we don't have internet. We have Wi-Fi."
There you go, dude. There you go. Parent technology.
So I was like, "Well, let's just, go to this website, speedtest.net. Let's see what we can get for upload speed, see if I can stream." And then it was like 5. She was getting 5 up. So I was like, "You know what? You're getting 5 up. I'll see you in a few days." And I got to call Andrew, and Coop's gonna see if we could find a time slot that we can get this in. And look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people already in the chat.
The chat is popping. I mean, they're confused. They're confused. They're surprised.
Great time of day. Top of the morning to you. We got people from Europe getting in here. Yeah. Good morning. Let's go. Yes, chat. Yes.
Harry Snowman says, "What the heck?" Rubbing his eyes, right? He's like, yes. What is going on?
Theo is in there. I'm putting Wake and Take out of business. Yeah, Jason's like, "Wait a second. I thought I had this time slot monopolized." Not so fast, Jason. Not so fast. You're not the only early riser around here. Woo, baby, we're doing this.
Love it.
I've been talking about a lot of players lately. A lot of scenarios going through my head. Just so you could put your thoughts on this out there. No way Dak leaves Dallas, right?
No, I mean, they're kind of setting him up for that do it or don't year. They even threw Zeke in there and says, "Hey, one last ride, boys," right? Jerry came out and said he wants to see one last one. But I personally, and I know it's hard to be one, but I personally believe that Dak is a solid enough quarterback that there's no way at the end of this year they can look around and say, let's just completely churn it. Let's run it over. I think they're just going to end up having to give him the going rate, right? The Trevor Lawrence deal or whatever the deal is. Because, I mean, he was QB3 last year statistically in fantasy. And QBs 1, 2, and 4 were running the ball all over the place. He was the best passer last year, right? Statistically. It's kind of hard to argue.
It's impossible to argue. When you're number 1 in pressure completion percentage and deep ball completion percentage, then you had a great year.
Yeah.
Right? And he was also number 1 in money throws, but also number 1 in pressured throws. I mean, the guy was under duress all season, and yet he stepped up. Like it is the weirdest thing that they wouldn't have known this and seen this coming and already locked him up earlier so they could get something less than whatever Jacksonville paid Trevor Lawrence. Then they should have done that. How they let this happen, how they didn't appreciate. They see him every day.
That's Jerry.
You don't appreciate him, and yet I've never seen the man. I've never met Dak Prescott. Right? I don't know what his hands feel like to shake. I don't know this guy. Right? I don't know his presence in the room, his gravitas. I have never experienced it. All I know is there's a site called playerprofiler.com, and all these stats are just right in your face.
Right. You compile them all. He leads the league in plays that make it happen. And again, last year, when you look at the playoff game, and this is from a fantasy standpoint, like he did put them in a hole, but as far as trying to shoot your way out of it, you can't do much better than 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like that's the kind of guy that for me, he didn't just fold up shop when it went ugly early. Like he fought, it didn't work out, but that's the kind of guy I want. I want a guy that can look at that situations like that and say, you know what, we're gonna keep balling, man. I'm gonna throw 400, and if we lose, then that's what the numbers are gonna look like. So I don't know. For me, Dak, I'm interested in fantasy and from a real life standpoint. And now that you and I still, we're unbiased, but we're still kind of pseudo Patriots fans, right? Like when you look at the last couple of years for us, I wouldn't mind having the Dak Prescott up here. That would be nice, right?
Oh, God. But there's a chance, we'll talk about this later in the show, but there's a chance that Drake May is good.
Yes.
There's a very good chance Drake May is good. And I'm reading that there's no way Drake May plays. It's not going to happen. It's the Jacoby Brissett show. May is going to sit. He's going to be developmental. And they always say this. They always say this in June and July. And then week 2 comes around.
Right, yeah.
It's like, okay, that plan only is like, everyone's got a plan. And then you get hit in the face week 1, and then by plan.
Like, wait
See
a second.
plan.
I've seen the Jacoby Brissett show a couple times already, right? I've seen this show before. We don't want to watch this show, right? And again,
it's not the worst show.
Exactly.
I mean, there are worse shows than the Jacoby Brissett show, but their path is the Drake May show. That's how they can become something. The sooner the better, in my opinion. And so when do you think that Drake May is going to start?
Honestly, the only way that Jacoby Brissett holds down the job is if he basically goes undefeated. And if you look at that schedule, because the worst thing, Matt, though you and I agree, the worst thing you can do is go like 8-9, right? Like if you're the New England Patriots right now, to finish the season 8-9 would be a nightmare because you don't make the playoffs. You never were going to, but you just crank your pick down so that you're outside of those elite guys. Teams basically say, I'm taking, there's 8 guys that are elite. I'll take whatever one I can get. You put yourself out of that spot, worst possible spot for this team right now. So either he is awesome or they got to get him out of there. And that whether you're 4-4, whether you're 0-8, doesn't matter. So I honestly think probably by week 5 or 6, they just say, okay, you know what? That's cool. It's been installed. He's watched a couple games from up in the box. Let's get Drake May.
So week 3.
It should be week 1.
No, I know it. Do you think week 1?
I think it should. I think he should just start. I think it should be like Anthony.
No, I know what you think should happen. Like if you were the GM and if you were Belichick, if you were the new dictator of the Patriots, but they don't have a dictator now. They have more of a well balanced organization, and I'm sure that the general manager has a plan, the coach has a plan. What do you think is actually going to happen in real life if we have to draft Drake May in, say, a Superflex league?
Then I think it will be at least a game that Jacoby Brissett starts, and probably 2. Like and again, as a Patriots fan, forget the fantasy, all that stuff. I would like to see Drake May be hands off, right? Be the ghost hovering over everything going on for one home game and one away game, and watch what a NFL quarterback does to get everybody ready. Here's where we stay in the hotel. Here's how we come out of the tunnel, right? Here's how that's it. That's all I want to see for Drake May. As a Patriots fan, I would love to see that. And then him watch the game and start thinking to himself, okay, here's how you get ready, but I can play better than that. And then now he knows how to do – you don't want him thinking about any of those things because as a rookie, think about the first game. I would be out there. I'd be like, man, do my gloves look right? Do my cleats look cool? Like you're worried about all that stuff. Where do I stand? Like these type things. You don't want him thinking about any of that. So if you have the veteran come out and show, hey, here's how you go through a game day, I would like for that as a fan. As a fantasy fan, I want to see Drake May right away. I want to see Jacoby Brissett pull a Taylor Heineke and say, I'm cool being the backup. I'll collect $1 million here and there, and then when I'm done doing that, I'll be a coach. Like that's what I want to see. Davis Webb, but it's probably going to be Brissett, and I think it should be from a NFL standpoint for 2 games.
That was a very long, meandering way of mentioning Davis Webb to get to week 3. Week 3 is the answer. We agree. Week 3 is the answer.
Fair.
James Young in the chat. And this is why podcasting with a chat, why live podcasting, the recording is so important. It was a game changer for me. The chat is always there when you need them. The chat is helpful. The chat adds to the show. Content comes in. Most of it's banal and not interesting. Some of it is fascinating. Some of it holds you accountable. James Young's holding me accountable. Yes, I did say that I would be curious to know what Dak Prescott's hands feel like. And that was kind of a weird thing to say. That was a weird thing to say. I was trying to get to that I have never shaken hands with him. But then from there, what I ended up saying was different and could be construed in different ways. And so, of course, James Yang, in order to hold me accountable, James Young says, what do Deshaun Watson's hands feel like?
Oh, no.
Right? Right?
They're probably pretty oily, I would say.
This is the feedback I need. This is what we need in the chat. Everybody in the chat, go look at James Young and see if you can top this. See if you could top this. I mean, it was relevant. It was funny. It humbled the host. I mean, it was this guy, he put that chat together, that comment before 9 a.m.
Yeah. He's firing on all cylinders. Maybe not his first coffee of the day.
No, James Young's doing great. He's doing incredible work out there. What about JJ McCarthy? When does he start?
Yeah, again, if I were them, I'm having and their situation is different because they brought in a guy who's still young and who still has upside. Like I personally want to see Sam Darnold get another shot. I want to see Drew Lock get another shot. I know that people don't like the second chances, but Baker Mayfield got paid. Geno Smith got paid. You're just a couple good stretches away from getting paid as an NFL QB. So I do want to see him actually get a real shot, to be honest. And I think that the Sam Darnold show could be better for Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson than the JJ McCarthy show right away. So I actually hope Sam Darnold, like in an ideal world, Sam Darnold plays and he's awesome. I know it's not super likely, but I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Week 5? I mean,
Yeah.
you're like in an ideal world, here's what I'd like to see. I want to see Drake May starting week 1. In reality, week 3. I would love to see Sam Darnold play at least half the year. In reality,
week 5.
Week 5. I think week 5. That's what Billy has for the projections. He has Sam Darnold week 5, and he likes Sam Darnold. Right? Now, Sam Darnold, isn't he on his 4th team?
Yep. He was on the Jets, then the Panthers, then the 49ers, and then now on to the Vikings. So that's what they say. Fourth team's a charm, right?
Did they say that? They?
No one ever says that.
I don't think they say that.
It never works out. But
I'm pretty sure that's not going to be a thing. And, J.J. McCarthy's not exactly a developmental quarterback. When I think of a developmental quarterback, I think of Josh Allen coming from Wyoming.
Yeah.
With a 50% completion percentage in college. Right?
And then a 52% completion percentage as a rookie.
Yeah. So that's what I think when I think of developmental. McCarthy, last time I checked, won the national championship.
Undefeated.
And didn't lose. And all they talked about is how few times he's lost ever in his whole football history.
He's Bill Russell.
So I think if you have Bill Russell at quarterback, you play. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program. Oh, it's an early one on this particular Sunday morning. We have with me today the best evaluator of tight ends, one of my favorite analysts in all of fantasy. The future of the fantasy football industry is here with me today from Fantasy Alarm. It is Andrew Cooper. Talk to me.
Now we're awake, baby. Now we can hit the smoke machines, baby. Let's go. Let's
hit
get
the
them,
smoke
dude.
machine.
Pew pew. Get the lasers out, dude. This is your intros, man. Best in the business, dude. I feel like I'm like ripping off like a Bulls tracksuit right now, even though we're just sitting at our computers at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Pew, 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 pew. Laser beam. Pew, 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 pew.
Dude,
it's 9 a.m. on a Sunday, and we're pew, 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 pew.
Dude, no better time to talk ball. What a better time, man. What a better time.
I can't think of a better time. If this was during the season, everyone would be up, setting their lineups, DFS, boom, boom, boom. Let's do this. But this is we're June 30th. If you're listening to the podcast, it's well into the month of July. July 4th coming up. 4th of July, the birthday of the country.
Everybody not in the chat is behind, Matt. They're behind. If you're not here right now with us talking ball late June, Sunday morning, 9 a.m., then you're already behind.
I was so impressed with the chat, right? We tweeted it out, you and I, and they answered the call. They were like, wait a second, we could listen live to a podcast on YouTube? This is crazy. Let's do it. Let's jump in here. I'm not doing anything. It's Sunday morning. I got coffee here. I got pancakes. Let's do this. They're talking about 4th of July, fireworks. It's Sunday morning. We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be this excited. We shouldn't have this much energy. It's not fair. It's not fair to the world that we come at this fantasy football hobby that we are so obsessed with, so passionate about. It's just not fair that we're obsessed about anything, passionate about anything this much at this level of energy, 9 a.m. on a Sunday. I feel bad for everybody else that they can't get to this place that we're at.
Everybody else that's not here, because we get to share that energy with Dustin in the chat and Jack Sensen and Anthony and the Harry Snowman and everybody. So, you know what?
We got 500 people listening live at 8:30 on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, that's right. We got a good crew. So I don't feel bad for them because they get to be part of this, dude. They get to be part of this beautiful moment. So good morning, everybody. 500
people out there are going to have one hell of a Sunday. I mean, this is just an on-ramp. This show is an on-ramp to an amazing. This makes me want to do 8:30 shows all the time.
Put it on the block, dude. I'm here. I'm available.
And so we'll start with one of my favorite questions of the offseason. In round one, you're going running back. Let's just say you're going running back. I'm usually not, but if you were, and McCaffrey's off the board, and by the way, we'll talk about McCaffrey later. Not even a sure thing, necessarily. Let's say he's off the board. Let's say you're going running back. You got Bijan. You got Breece Hall. Who you got?
This is a big one. This is one of those decision points to shout out another show on this network, right? There it is. I'm a company man. The decision point here. And I'll tell you what I'm doing in any sort of PPR, right? And I don't play standard, so every league that I'm in, I'm personally taking Breece Hall. And the reason is the floor you get from the pass game from him, right? Breece Hall last year led all running backs in targets on screens. The year before that, Aaron Jones catching screens from Aaron Rodgers led all running backs in targets on screens. The year before that, it was Aaron Jones again. So the last year without Rodgers, they called the screens. With Rodgers this year, they're going to call the screens. 30 screens. Think about that. That's almost two free receptions every single game, right? So at the top here, where obviously we have to split hairs between two great players, I just look at it, especially in full PPR, and I say that creates such an incredible floor for this player. And last year, coming off a torn ACL, he still managed to be the RB2 in this format. So for me, it's Breece Hall, but I'm happy. I'm most happy when somebody else takes one of them and I get the other one without having to think about it.
That's right. No, so I appreciate that you're looking at the floor more than the ceiling in round one. Pick is so valuable that you can't whiff on that pick. And so you thinking, okay, I got to make sure I get the production, particularly in the passing game, from whatever running back I'm drafting here, whether it be McCaffrey, that's locked in. We know that. He's going to catch a lot of passes. And then there's Breece Hall. But what I'm hearing from you is, I want explosive Aaron Jones. And for me, I'm looking for more than explosive Aaron Jones. I'm going to go with the upside play. I'm going to go with Bijan because I think the floor is baked in. The floor is baked in that he's going to get 250 carries. You can lock that in. He's going to get 10 touchdowns. That's locked in with Kirk Cousins. And he's going to get 50 catches because he had 58 last year. So there's a whole level of baseline built into Bijan, but the upside at every level, with the exception of catches and receiving yards, is higher with Bijan than it is with Breece Hall because Bijan's going to get more total touches in a faster-paced offense where most years Aaron Rodgers, bottom 5 in pace of play, Kirk Cousins, top 5 in pace of play. So for those reasons, I'm going Bijan because if I'm going to draft a running back, I'm going to be swinging for the fences. That's how I'm going to think about it. I'm already going risk. I'm already embracing risk by going running back in the first round. Might as well go with the guy that could be explosive LaDainian Tomlinson. A more explosive LaDainian Tomlinson to me is better than a more explosive Aaron Jones. That's my argument. Which first-round pick are you drafting the least of? First-round ADP, which guy do you look at your, let's say, your underdog exposure, and you're like, okay, I got the least of this guy in the first round?
Yeah, and again, it was a play. This is a player that you and I, to some degree, might have been wrong on. But again, it boils down to decision points, right? Like if you pick one guy, right? If you take one guy, you don't get the others. Like last year, I was taking a lot of CeeDee Lamb, which worked out. But because of where he was going at the end of the first, and I was taking him towards the middle, that meant there was a ton of guys I got none of, right? Because if you do that, you end up in that spot. So
Sure.
for me, I like Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I actually like A.J. Brown because since he's gotten to the Eagles, he's had back-to-back essentially 1,500 yards. And again, it's a very safe play. They haven't changed anything. It's Devonta Smith, it's A.J. Brown, it's Dallas Goedert, it's the good old boys. I know Saquon's in there mixing it up, but that can only help that offense to some degree.
Just a good old boy.
Just a good old boys. I'm taking
Never
him.
made enough.
And by default, when you take those two guys a lot, you don't get Puka Nacua. So you know what? I'm willing to look at it and say, all right, maybe he gets a little more tougher coverage this year. Maybe Cooper Kupp is a little more healthy this year. Maybe it's a little more spread out. And I'm going to go with what I know to be the de facto number one wide receivers on their team versus a guy that's playing with a guy that the other wide receiver on the team just a couple of years ago had the best fantasy season ever. So it does concern me a little bit.
And look at where these quarterbacks get drafted. I mean, Matthew Stafford in some leagues doesn't even get drafted.
Right.
Okay, so think about that. And there's another guy in there that you need to list, Garrett Wilson. So I know that Garrett Wilson was crushed by Puka Nacua last year, but I believe that Garrett Wilson will outproduce Puka Nacua this year. I'm trying. See, the thing is, like with Bijan, I'm drafting for this year. I appreciate what happened last year, and last year is last year, and last year is definitive, forever. It's in the history books. We can't go back in time. Right? You can time travel, by the way. You can always time travel forward into time. Okay? So if you were to get in a spaceship and go at the speed of light for years and then come back, you would have spent a couple years in space, and everyone that you know would be either dead or super old. You just time traveled. Cool. Right? You can't go back, though. There's no going back. What's happened is locked in forever. Puka Nacua outproduced Garrett Wilson forever, and it's impossible to change it no matter how fast you go. Speed of light, faster than the speed of light, whatever it is. Okay? That was 2023. You see? And the reason why Justin Jefferson is so special, why people respect him so much, is that he did it as a rookie. And then, see, the thing is, he did it as a sophomore. Okay? And we just never see that. Almost always the league adjusts. Right? They're like, we're not gonna be caught off guard by Puka this year. Right? Or Cooper Kupp comes into camp healthier than he's been for years, or there's injuries on the offensive line and Matthew Stafford has less time to throw. There's all these things that can just change the underlying structure that supported your big breakout season in 2023, and you simply can't replicate it in 2024. It's a very rare thing. I would be shocked, given how long I've been doing this and how many wide receivers I've seen come and go in the league. I would be absolutely blown away if Puka Nacua came close to what he did last year. So I don't think he will. I don't think he's Justin Jefferson. Okay, am I a bad guy because I don't think Puka Nacua is Justin Jefferson?
Right, and it wouldn't be the first time. It wouldn't be the first time this happened. I mean, I could bring up a name, sore subject in this neck of the woods, in Juju Smith-Schuster. that came out playing alongside another elite wide receiver and had no one covering him and no one thinking about him until they looked back and said, wow, did that guy really have 1,400 yards, 1,300 yards? When did that happen, right? Because everyone's all eyes on Antonio Brown. Now people know. The cat's out of the bag on that, and we're going to see coverages shift. It's going to be a little different. Same with like Calvin Ridley when he was a rookie on the other side of Julio Jones. He was going crazy. Everyone thought he was going to go crazy when he was the only guy, right? When he was the star. And then all of a sudden you get star treatment by the defense and kind of not as easy to shine. So, and again, we're not saying that's going to happen, but the fact that it could happen versus, I mentioned a guy like A.J. Brown, he's been the top dog. He faces a tough coverage in and out every single week, 2 straight years now, 1,500 yards back to back, no problem, slam dunk for me. So it's those little things where it's like, the stupid cliche. Hey, I'll hit you, cliche alert me on this. But when they say you can't win your draft in the first round, but you can lose it, that's my concern. And this is coming from a guy who has fallen for some of these in the past. So I drafted C.J. Spiller the year.
Cliche alert! Cliche alert! Cliche alert!
I deserved it. I earned it.
Cliche alert!
Yeah, but I drafted C.J. Spiller the year that Nathaniel Hackett said he was going to give him the ball until he throws up. And in a lot of those leagues, had I just drafted a normal player that has already been good multiple years, I probably would have won those leagues. So you got to be very careful with that.
Yeah, and I love it how when Juju broke out, and I love how you're mentioning these guys like Juju Smith-Schuster. It's unbelievable. It's perfect. It's so perfect.
Get me in trouble calling Puka Nacua Juju Smith-Schuster. Do not clip that.
No, but remember what happened. It was all the narrative around that. Well, they play faster than they actually are, right? And that's the thing. When there's no one on you and you can just catch and run, you look faster.
Right. You
look real fast and super explosive when you're not at all. Right? Puka Nacua, not athletic at all. And eventually that is going to have an impact. It is going to be a down season. There is. And you see this. The narrative is out there. It's right in the chat. I'm reading it right now. From It's Chuka Baby says, I think the way Puka plays makes him special. That doesn't mean anything. That is a nonsense sandwich. Like, what? Right? What do you mean the way he plays? Wait, you like that he was going up against number 2 and number 3 corners, and that he, and also don't forget about the wristbands on the bicep, right? So he's got some swagger to him, right? He's got some style, right? These are all things that create a visualization bias. And you look up, and the guy's putting up, a solid 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns, and he's a 3rd, 4th round pick next year.
Dude, you college player, all the college players out there, throw the armbands on the biceps. Get yourself a dark visor, full round in value. You're going up.
Yeah, visualization bias. I just made that up. I made that term up. Anyone in the business, feel free to use that.
Add it to the glossary.
Right? Yeah, that's open source. That's all my catchphrases, all my figures of speech. They're all open source. And that was a great answer because I've been waiting for someone to say that, and no one will. And my issue is, again, at the end of the first round, there's a bunch of receivers I just prefer. This was very, very difficult to get my hands on any Puka, and especially now where Justin Jefferson himself is slipping into the late first round.
Right.
Now, there's another wide receiver that could outproduce Puka Nacua. They're both second-year receivers. One guy is the clear-cut alpha wide receiver on his team, and the other guy is not necessarily yet in Puka Nacua. Theo Greminger thinks that Zay Flowers is poised to break Ravens records this year, that his upside is not fully understood, and I wouldn't be surprised if Zay Flowers outscores Puka Nacua. What do you think about Zay this year?
I mean, it's entirely possible. I'm looking for the ideal world, Matt, is super high target consolidation where you have a bunch of I don't want to say losers, but you have a bunch of guys on the field that aren't collecting targets, right? You look at the 49ers with the fullback usage and, Charlie Warner playing a million snaps and having 3 targets, right? Like that's how you get the consolidation we're looking for. So when this team comes out and says, and I love Isaiah Likely, I think if Mark Andrews goes down, I'll plug him right in. But Isaiah Likely, if they're going to use him at wide receiver, like he's not going to get 100 targets. Rashad Bateman, I still have a little hope, but are we penciling him in for 100 targets? Mark Andrews is going to get his, and then somebody else, because Derrick Henry is already talking about how excited he is for Patrick Ricard. Patrick Ricard plays fullback, but he also plays inline tight end, but they're not throwing him the ball. Like having that guy on the field means that everybody else gets the ball just a little bit more, and that's what creates that crazy upside for some of these guys, where it's like you want to see that. You want it, so like the Falcons signed Charlie Warner. That's great for Kyle Pitts. You want as many of those clunkers on the field as possible because it frees up our boys, the guys we want to get the ball. So Zay Flowers playing with Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely and Patrick Ricard and Derrick Henry, who doesn't really catch the ball either. There's ball's got to go somewhere, man. And we know Lamar Jackson's looked like a better passer, man. No one gives him credit for it. No one gives him. He threw the year's MVP, threw 36 touchdown passes. Like this, he can throw the football. The whole thing is he should be a running back. It's over. You know what I mean? He can play.
It's that one Pro Bowl skills performance that he had was the dreadful skills performance of all time in the history of the Pro Bowl. You'll never again. This is forever. Like that skills performance can't be undone. You can't go back in time, Lamar, and redo it. Where when he's standing still, he can't throw the ball accurately. But when he's on the move, he can. It's like these golfers that have these crazy swings, and you can't believe it. And you're like, if you're like, there's this guy Tony Finau. You know this guy? You know golf?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I love it, dude. He's got the most swagger of anybody out there. I love his outfits, dude. They crushes that for sure.
Right. Tony Finau is an awesome golfer. He's a phenom, right? But my daughter's learning to golf, and I'm like, do not watch. Okay, this guy's look away, right? I'm like, please, whatever you do, don't watch him swing. I don't want any of this getting in your mind because everything he's doing is wrong. Everything, nothing is right. But he has the best hands on the sport, right? He's just an incredible athlete, and he's like the Lamar Jackson of golf. Like he has to be on the move. His whole body has to be on the move in order for him to make good contact. It's counterintuitive. It's weird, but like that's just the way it is. Jim Furyk has one of the worst swings I've ever seen, and he shot like a 58. It happens. Like great athletes, the tip-top athletes in the world, it doesn't matter on platform, off platform, elbow in, elbow out, who fucking cares, right? Lamar Jackson just needs to get him on the move. You can't have his feet planted in cement, and then that ball suddenly, it drops right in where he wants it. And Zay Flowers, last time I checked, if there was a guy where you're like, well, the defense is going to pay extra attention to him, and there's not a lot of options for Lamar Jackson to go through his read progressions, it's going to be very difficult for Zay Flowers to get separation when he's facing bracket coverage and the best corner on the opposing defense. He would have to be, Coop, he would have to be one of the best route runners and one of the best separators in the NFL. Oh, wait a second. Oh, wait. Oh, my God. That's what Zay Flowers is.
Yes.
That's his whole identity.
Would you look at that? Isn't it nice how it works out like that?
Yeah. If there was a guy that you could plug into that role who's the next Keenan Allen. This is funny because I always thought Rashad Bateman was explosive Keenan Allen. Turns out, really, if you really want the next Keenan Allen in terms of route running and creating horizontal separation, it's absolutely Zay Flowers. I mean, how many social media clips did we see of Zay Flowers putting guys on skates last year in camp with no NFL experience? Think about that.
Yeah. And just the fact that he was able to overtake everybody immediately. I mean, they had Odell Beckham on the team. They had Rashad Bateman on the team. They had all the tests, right? You have you bring in like they're doing like the Giants bringing in Drew Lock. They're testing Daniel Jones. Is he better than this replacement level guy? The Ravens had all the tests and he passed them all, right? Better than the aging vet, better than our other young wide receiver we just drafted, better than Nelson Aguilar, better than everybody else. Like he earned that top dog role. And the beautiful thing is they stuck with it. I mean, the Tez Walker, interesting name, but like they didn't do anything. They didn't do anything special. They could have gone out and had DJ Moore Keenan Allen like the Bears did. Keenan Allen was available if they wanted Keenan Allen. And they said, no, we already have Keenan Allen. We have Keenan Allen at home. And it's better than that one.
We have explosive Keenan Allen. It was supposed to be Bateman. Turns out it's actually Zay Flowers. It's poetic. It really is poetic. So I was in an FSGA best ball league, just a single league, standalone league, and I really wanted Russell Wilson because it's a long story, but I waited too long on quarterback. I drafted Jaden Daniels, of course. But then for my second quarterback, I was like, well, I'm gonna wait and wait and wait. I'm gonna get all the guys I want. I'm gonna get Roshan. I'm gonna do all the stuff I like to do. And I know no one wants Russell Wilson. It's best ball. No one knows whether he's gonna play all year. So I'm sure he'll be available. Of course, I was wrong. Someone grabbed him. Someone who didn't have Pickens drafted him. And I was like, that's really, wow. So I have Pickens, and you're drafting Russell Wilson. Okay. Oh, you can never tell, man. You should. This is the lesson. You cannot assume that everyone in the league you're playing in plays like you and understands the fundamentals of fantasy like you do and thinks like you do. You can't do that. So that was a mistake I made. It was a big mistake. And I asked that question about J.J. McCarthy because I ended up with J.J. McCarthy as my second quarterback, which was not great. Not great. Really what I would call a mistake. And then it turned out what that guy wanted to do, and this was I didn't even think about this because I would never do this, but this was his plan all along, was of course a few picks later, he went Justin Fields. So he was thinking, so his plan was, well, I'm gonna make sure I lock down, get the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback on lockdown. I'm gonna use 2 picks to lock down the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback. And then I was like, oh, okay. So I see. I never see. That was a lack of imagination, man. That was my problem. I'm in the draft room, and I'm not imagining how things can go in a way that I would never even consider. So. Is that? I'm sure there are other people that are like, well, can't you just draft both these guys? Like, is that ever a good idea to go Wilson and Fields?
No, of course, dude. Of course not. Of course not, dude. And to dig into your glossary, you say the fallacy of rational coaching. You got caught by the fallacy of rational drafting. You thought this person would be normal. Turns out that he's outside of his mind. In a format where there's no waivers, you can't just like, oh, I'll just drop the other one. Like that. You have them both for the whole year. And the way I look at it is this: how often does a team stink and the quarterback stink, and then they bring in another veteran backup, and then all of a sudden things are good? Exactly 0% of the time does that happen. And I look at Mike Tomlin. Do you think Mike Tomlin is the type of guy? You say on the sideline, and he's like, all right, let's run the Wildcat here with Justin. Do you think Mike Tomlin is that type of dude? There's a 0. Yeah, get your Tomlin glasses out. Get your Mike Tomlin. Put yourself in the standard is the standard. We're going to take our starting quarterback out and run some sort of gimmicky. Like that's just not who he is. What I think is most likely to happen is a team that went to the playoffs last year with Kenny Pickett. We'll leave him on. A team that went to the playoffs last year with Kenny Pickett as the quarterback and has never gone under 500 under Mike Tomlin is going to bring in Russell Wilson, who just on paper had a pretty decent season. I mean, touchdowns versus interception, top 5 in the league. I mean, he scored 29 touchdowns between throwing and rushing. Patrick Mahomes scored 27 for those keeping track at home. And Mahomes played one more game than Russell Wilson played. There's a real possibility. that a playoff team from last year in the Steelers with Russell Wilson is a playoff team again. And Russell Wilson's the starting quarterback all year long, and he's going off the board at QB 30, 32 in underdog. There's a real world where Russell Wilson is just good. So for me, I'm drafting Russell Wilson, and I'm not wasting a pick on Justin Fields, especially if I have Russell Wilson.
I should have drafted Russell Wilson. I fucked up, man. I
should
really fucked up. He's a great late round option. I've been talking myself into him more and more and more. He's got Tyler Lockett in Calvin Austin. He's got his DK Metcalf in George Pickens, a bit better than DK Metcalf. Really, let's be clear. He's got a better tight end than he's ever had in Pat Freiermuth. I mean, it's interesting. We all make mistakes. We all make mistakes in life. I flew too close to the sun. We've all done this. We've all done this in best ball leagues where you fly too close to the sun with your QB2, even in Superflex leagues. We've all done this, right? You've done this. Like, how do you approach the quarterback position in Superflex?
I've been doing a lot of, you could just call, I mean, it really is hero QB. That's what I do. I get one of the guys I like. I have a list of guys I like. Bing, bang, boom. And it includes Anthony Richardson. It includes Kyler Murray. Like, I'm just looking for crazy upside, right? Just like everybody else. And then I try and get one of those guys. And then
Jaden Daniels, that's where the line is, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And then I let everybody else take the Achilles boys, you know what I mean? Like, that don't run at all. Don't even do QB sneaks. Like, I'm not going to take Cousins. I'm not going to take Rodgers. I'm not going to take Goff. And
the Achilles brothers.
Yeah, I take a shot on just the craziest upside I can get, and the places I look are the places I've seen it, and I've seen it recently. So like Russell Wilson, I'm in on. I'm also doing, and people hate when I mention this. I posted on Reddit the other day, and everyone was like downvote immediately. That there's a world where Deshaun Watson actually is still pretty good at football, and we'll have to see. But I've been asking people, I'm like, what do you think it is? And they're like, they mumble something about losing your mojo, or, that maybe his shoulder is permanently injured, even though people didn't want to admit that the truth was that part of his shoulder broke off last year and he played 2 more games like that. Like, they don't want to admit that happened. And they don't want to admit that this guy, when you sort all quarterbacks all time by fantasy points per game, is third, behind only Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. They don't want to admit that that's possible because the guy's a creep. But for me, I care about winning fantasy leagues. And I play high stakes FFPC and all that. And you don't get any extra points for not having creeps on your team. Like, you get extra points for having Tyreek Hill on your team, even though he is constantly doing very, very strange things, fighting people on docks and, breaking women's legs at the beach. Like, he still was on pace for like 2,000 yards before he hurt his ankle. Like, you have to have those guys. So for me, if I get a discount because people think this guy's weird, I'll take that all day long.
All of his receivers produced in the SEC, right? Elijah Moore, mega producer in the SEC, underrated. Jerry Jeudy is trying to resuscitate his career. I can see Jerry Jeudy bouncing back, not being anyone I really care about in fantasy, but someone that could absolutely help Deshaun Watson, someone that can separate at least horizontally and get open. Cooper, Moore, Jeudy, they get open. And then you got Cedric Tillman, who can win on the sideline, win on the boundary. It's interesting. Plus you got David Njoku, one of the most explosive tight ends, going down the seam. This is
entirely possible.
This is an upgraded wide receiver core. If there's any use for Jerry Jeudy, and I've had no use for Jerry Jeudy, everyone knows he's been on my do not draft list since came out of Alabama, right? This is it. This is his one utility. Like, provide an option underneath, a safety option for Deshaun Watson. And
I will now take this moment to quietly say that I do like drafting Jerry Jeudy. Don't tell anybody that. Don't tell anybody that I will quietly wait and stack Jerry Jeudy and Deshaun Watson for when, you look at these guys. 20, that's what it takes to be a top 5 all time. 20 and change fantasy points per game. Last year in those 5 games, and same with Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson was at 18, just under 18. I mean, it's not that hard to get a couple extra points per game, and I think it's entirely possible.
So on Underdog, that's where they love wide receivers. Wide receivers go earlier on Underdog.
Crazy.
He's in the 11th round. So you get 11th round Jerry Jeudy. Not bad. Not bad. Elijah Moore goes at the end of the draft. And according to the team depth charts, Elijah Moore still is the wide receiver 2 there. But so that to me right there, Elijah Moore was better in college than Jerry Jeudy. Elijah Moore bounced back last year. Okay. I think Elijah Moore had a career year. He had over 1,100 air yards, just didn't have the touchdowns. He had 104 targets. So Elijah Moore had like one of the under-the-radar quality seasons. It just, it didn't translate into fantasy points because, he was dealing with some really subpar quarterback play when Deshaun Watson was either playing with a broken shoulder or finally out. The catchable pass rate was near the bottom of the league, right? And he was top 15 in unrealized air yards and didn't score any touchdowns. So there's a pretty easy, if you just go to Player Profiler and you look at the touchdown rate and you look at the unrealized air yards, if you could put those guys that rank near the top of the league in unrealized air yards and in the bottom of the league in touchdown rate, you put those two things together, that's going to be a sleeper wide receiver who I'm going to be drafting at the end of the draft every time. So that's why. If Elijah Moore wasn't this incredible opportunity, then I would be drafting more Jerry Jeudy because I'm not opposed to finally getting in on a player when the darkest moments have hit and he's at a career low valuation. That's typically when I'm like, okay, now green light, now it's safe to draft this guy.
Yeah.
Right? I'll even draft a little Quentin Johnston this year.
That's how I feel about Pat Fryermuth a little bit with that.
Yeah.
Where it's like everybody loved him, and I had him in my fades article last year because I was like, they had 2 good wide receivers and a not good quarterback. That's the formula for trouble for tight ends. But now Deontay Johnson is 9 targets a game. See you later. He's gone. So it's like I'll go for the fancy guys on the way back, the hyped guys. So that's why I don't know. Jeudy versus Elijah Moore. I feel like whoever wins that is the guy. So maybe I need to mix in a little more Elijah Moore. It's not hard, huh? Are you?
Well, you can get him at the last round. So think about this. Steelers have been quietly rebuilding their offensive line and getting better and recommitting to Mike Tomlin, one of the best coaches in the league. I mean, there's a few guys, John Harbaugh, Mike Tomlin, there's a few guys where I would say these are absolutely, without a doubt, unequivocally above average coaches. I don't know much about coaches, but I know that. Okay? Then you've got the Browns, who had one of the best defenses last year. They're getting stronger. They're getting Nick Chubb back. What week do you think Nick Chubb comes back, by the way?
According to him, week 1. But I've heard that one before. He says anytime you hear I wouldn't rule it out, I kind of rule it out, right? Like
he'll beat. Do you think he'll beat T.J. Hawkinson back?
Hawk is supposed to be on schedule. I'm not drafting any T.J. Hawkinson. I don't know about you, man. I tweeted it the other day. I was like, I said it would be easier to draft T.J. Hawkinson if he wasn't hurt and his QB was better and Justin Jefferson wasn't there and Jordan Addison also wasn't there. Then I would be drafting that kind of player. But right now, that's going to be a no for me, dog. And honestly, with Nick Chubb, I would much rather draft him in a redraft league, especially one with a IR spot or a pup spot potentially, than I would in the other ones. Because, it's like you can't rule out the possibility that he recovers the way Breece Hall did. I know he's older than Breece Hall, but Breece Hall came back and was gangbusters, right? So it's possible. It's just the way, I don't know, man. If you go back and watch that clip again,
no, I don't. Don't talk about it.
I never will. Yeah.
Don't talk about it.
It makes it hard to believe that he's going to be back and ready to rock and roll. But I'm rooting for him. He's such a good player, incredible player.
That was like a Moises Alou all over again. You ever see the Moises Alou injury? I saw the Moises Alou injury. For some reason, I was watching that game. I think I was living in Chicago at the time. I was watching that game. Oh my God. That hurt me. That hurt my soul to watch. When you see something go the wrong way in real time. It's just not good.
One I was watching in real time, remember Andrew Bogut when he dunked and then it landed on his arm and his elbow would just go down,
yes.
like there was nothing on there.
Well, that actually that hurts me in multiple ways because that actually happened to me. I broke my elbow. So that I've had that happen to me in real life. So that was no good. But now think about this, okay? So Browns, whether Chubb plays week 1 or not, you're going to have a healthy Deshaun Watson, acclimated, finally an off season where everyone can just develop and grow and develop rapport with one another. Inserting Jerry Jeudy in the lineup, that's going to be an improvement over, say, Donovan Peoples-Jones. So the other team in the AFC North we haven't talked about is the Bengals.
Right.
Okay, to think about this, how do you see the AFC North shaking out? This is crazy. They all can't make the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think that's why I like betting on Russell Wilson, but the Steelers, I mean, if there was ever a year that they don't make the playoffs, maybe it's this one because I mean the division's so good. Like the Ravens are so locked in, and with Derrick Henry now, can you imagine being a linebacker and they got in the backfield they got Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and Patrick Ricard. Dude,
this is what I'm talking about.
I would be getting cramps.
The Ravens got Derrick Henry.
I know, what the heck, dude? How do we allow that to happen? What are you guys doing? So, and for me, the Bengals have felt like, and honestly, I know you guys talk a lot about this, you with Anand Nanduri, like, it boils down to me, I just don't think that's a very well-run team. Like, I don't think that they fall in the group that I don't think is doing enough. Like, you're right there. You got to go all in, push the chips. The Bills, for another team that I just feel like has never really done enough. To some degree, the Lions even just like one more wide receiver. I just feel like they're floundering in a spot where they should be finding a way to mortgage the future and push everything in. You know what I mean? It's like you're leaving yourself so thin with just 3 good players on offense that I just worry that they're just not built the way that these other teams are. The Ravens are just they're just so rock solid, man. Mark Andrews goes down, they got another one. You know what I mean? It's like they're ready to go. They likely was a top 5 tight end. It's just, and again, when you trust the coaching and you trust the ownership, that's what you get. So I think if I was going to sort that division, I would say Ravens on the top, and then the Bengals and Browns fighting for one playoff spot, and the Steelers probably not making it, right?
I mean, at the end, the Steelers are going with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. I mean, they're not going to make it.
I know, dude. We talked to earlier in the show, but the thing is, for fantasy, look, we got the Mike Tomlin glasses on. We support the guy. For fantasy, I think it's going to be good. That division is tough, man. And you don't have. Last I checked, there have never been four teams from the same division to make the playoffs. It's just not possible.
Dude, you know what other division is a nightmare? Murderer's Row. Think about the NFC West.
Yeah.
Right? NFC West. Now, look what Arizona's doing on offense. Look at Arizona. Oh, we got Trey Benson. Oh, yeah, and also Marvin Harrison. And we're going to get Kyler Murray back at 100%. And we're improving the defense and all these things. It's like, whoa, okay. And Seahawks probably don't make, don't make it. But look at the Rams, right? The Rams, Cooper Kupp, they're going to be putting up a lot of points. That's the case for drafting Matt Stafford. You talked about the strategy earlier about Superflex. It's exactly what I do. Hero QB. Think about all these late round wide receivers, late round running backs, late round tight ends, but there's also late round quarterbacks. And with Superflex, there's a lot of them. Now, I'm not going after the Aaron Rodgers of the world, as you mentioned, the Achilles boys. That's not my that's not of the pocket passers you talked about. I do believe that Jared Goff is undervalued.
Right.
I mean, Jared Goff is essentially putting up Joe Burrow numbers, but his name isn't Joe Burrow, and he didn't win a national championship, and he was dumped by his team that drafted him at the 101. But they're both 101s technically. But so I do like
They
Goff
both
as a
lost Super Bowl.
value. Yeah, so that would actually be Goff is the starting point when I start thinking about my QB2 in Superflex and 2 QB leagues, and then just kind of work my way down from there, where Russell Wilson is absolutely a guy I want. But, you know, it would be nice, you know, also to just get Murray and Daniels, right? If I don't start off with one of these super stud quarterbacks, then I'm also fine going, you know, Murray Daniels. That's probably my favorite. But the Richardson too. You know, if you can get two of those three guys, then that's also a viable strategy. But what I don't do is I don't go all in on quarterback in the first 2 rounds. That's just not it.
No, and the thing is, like, and especially you think about like a league like the Scott Fish Bowl, right, where everybody gets drafted. A lot of these Superflex leagues now, the way we're setting them up, the benches are so deep, everybody gets drafted, right? And what ends up happening is, and in Scott Fish Bowl, there's no trades. If you go out and take 2 quarterbacks right away, and then you take a third one later, and that QB hits, it's not as powerful, right? Like if you went QB to start, and then later you took a stab on CJ Stroud, well, you still have to bench one of those guys. You can't trade him, can't do anything with him. So it's like, I just don't like the way it works out. I'd rather do the hero RB, 0 RB type thing at quarterback, where if I do find the Jordan Love or the CJ Stroud, then I just created so much leverage. You're creating all this leverage because you get the running backs and the wide receivers at the top and the quarterbacks versus having 3 good quarterbacks. And now you got to trade, or you got to sell one and nobody wants to buy. It's just, I'd much rather go year round there. And I will say, Kyler Murray, man, that offense last year, it's underrated. With Murray at quarterback, they scored 22.4 points per game with him at quarterback, which is more than the Chiefs, more than the Jaguars, just behind the Texans. Like, it helped that the defense was kind of garbage, and they had to get back out there every 5 minutes or so. But I mean, they were putting points with Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, again, I talked about Deshaun Watson being 3rd all time in fantasy points per game. Well, number 4, Kyler Murray. So I'm very, very much in on the toddler.
I mean, I'll just give my strategy away with the Scott Fish Bowl. I would rather not draft a quarterback in round 1. I want CeeDee Lamb. Theo came on with me. He and I, it was a duo in the Sonic Truth podcast. I think CeeDee Lamb can break all the records this year. Just smash all the records. They don't have a running game. It's Zeke, right? They've got the remnants of Zeke out there, okay? The husk of Zeke Elliott, okay? And who's across the field from him? Jalen Tolbert, Brandon Cooks, Dalton Schultz, or Jake Ferguson, whoever. It was Dalton Schultz. Now it's Jake Ferguson. Same exact fucking
Austin
guy.
Hooper,
Look at that confusion.
Austin Hooper, it's all the same guy.
It's the same guy. Look at that confusion. I just got it wrong. Again, now it's understandable because he was the Cowboys tight end, but I haven't yet in my mind processed that, they made this huge change, Coop. They went from Schultz to Ferguson. Who cares? It's all about CeeDee Lamb, and I know I can get a great quarterback in round 2. If I want to go right back to quarterback in round 3, I can, but I didn't just go QB to start and seed all that ground. It's better, though, if I could get a quarterback, say, in round 2, whoever that is. Is it Murray? Is it Richardson? Maybe I wait until round 3. Maybe hope Jaden Daniels falls there. It's probably not going to happen. But you read the room, see how things are flowing, see how the ADPs are stacking up, and then wait a few rounds. You have to feel like you are gaining leverage on the field, and the way to do that is to hit on a late round running back, or 2 or 3, and a late round quarterback. If you go back and look at the best teams throughout the history of the Scott Fish Bowl, that's been the structure. They've drafted receiver earlier than a lot of these teams, because this is the great fallacy. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it not true that when a scoring system seems to devalue a particular position, that the less sophisticated fantasy gamers will just devalue that position on a one-for-one basis, where the sophisticated ones will realize, oh, wait, that actually may, in fact, increase the value of the super studs at that position. So that's actually more reason to draft Lamb, not less.
True. And we see it with tight end premium too, where people, again, it's good for the studs. People overdo it in the middle, right? They overdo their rankings, right? It's like and this goes for all formats, to be completely honest. PPR versus standard, right? The good players are going to be the good players. And, Scott Barrett already mathematically proved that a target is still better than a carry, even in standard. A target, not just a reception, a target is still better than standard. It's like, just draft the good players, man. So if you have a guy like CeeDee Lamb that was the only player to score 400 PPR points last year, and he's guaranteed targets, and it's bad over there when the beat writers are trying to write to me about Jalen Brooks and Ryan Flournoy, right? And it's like, maybe they do break out, but that's going to come at the expense of Brandon Cooks and Jalen Tolbert. It's not going to come at the expense of CeeDee Lamb. And
Right.
CeeDee Lamb has the best role possible for fantasy football, which is you play slot in 3 wide receiver sets, and then you move outside for 2 wide receiver sets. You were in the 4th. It's how we got Cooper Kupp. It's how we got Chris Godwin. It's how we got Keenan Allen. If you play slot and get those matchups, which he ran the 4th most routes from the slot of any wide receiver, and then you stay on the field for an extra 200 to 300 snaps out wide, that's how you get these super mega crazy seasons. And we just had one last year, and we could have an even better one.
And looking at late round running backs that you could hit on, I mean, what a great gift that all the rookie running backs are values. All of them. Every single one. There's no early rookie running back that everyone's steamed up. That hasn't happened to Jonathan Brooks. It hasn't happened to Trey Benson. I would have thought in a rational, reasonable world with all of this coach speak and all of this player speak that Blake Corum would have been steamed up by now, given that the only player ahead of him is Kyron Williams, who is just a guy, but that hasn't happened yet either. So this is where, I would hero RB and hero QB in a Superflex league in the Scott Fish Bowl is as close to an optimal strategy, with an average board. Again, you need to be able to adjust. If Jaden Daniels falls around and falls to you in a Superflex league, then I say draft him. Right? If he's going to slip to you, then you have to be like water. You have to be fluid. You have to adjust. You have to say yes to incredible values that can revolutionize your roster. Now, you don't want to get value trapped like I did, where I am like, well, I just got a great value on Khalil Shakir. I'm going to wait around to draft Russell Wilson. Right? That was a mistake. That's where you get value trapped. If you can get Jaden Daniels around after his typical Superflex ADP, and this happens in leagues like the Scott Fish Bowl all the time, you never know who you're drafting against. You never know who's going to slip. Then you have to just say yes. But on balance, all else equal, the average ADP draft that you happen to be participating in, if you go hero RB and hero QB together in a Superflex league, that allows you to get a stud tight end, that allows you to load up on stud wide receivers, and then take advantage of the hits that you're confident you'll get on whoever your QB2 and QB3 are. Assume you're going to hit on one of those guys, and assume you're going to hit on a couple running backs. Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks, Blake Corum. Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks, Blake Corum, knowing nothing about them except they were the day 2 picks.
Right. Bingo. Yeah. And you can even throw tight end into that group with the way you're handling quarterback, because there's like 5 or 6 of them, depending on how you feel about like a Kyle Pitts or Evan Ingram. But there's at least 5 of them where it's like, I'm the tight end guy. I don't care which one I get even. I don't care. I'm not going to take the first one off the board. So I'm not getting a lot of Laporta. But I would, if he falls, I would take him. But like Laporta, Kelsey, Andrews, Kincaid, Trey McBride. I mean, you just kind of hang back and take whoever's there, man. You take whoever's there, whoever you can get a good value on. So you don't even have to force that issue, right? You can just kind of you can take it as it comes to you, and then just have a list later. If you don't get one of those guys, have a list of breakout guys, and we do that every single year at every position. So it's shaping up like a really nice year to just grab some stud wide receivers and say, oh, hey, there's Kincaid, throw him on the team. There's Jaden Daniels, like you said. So it's really nice, dude. The whole Travis Kelce and who cares era is over, and I love it. It makes our lives easier.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering how Laporta outscores Kincaid. Actually,
I have Kincaid ahead of Laporta in my rankings.
I don't understand it, and if you just do the crazy thing, which is to assume that the guy that has one of the more busterific profiles, drafted at one of the most busterific draft slots in Keon Coleman, if he busts, as he probably will, it's the easiest, like, high-octane offense to stack I've ever seen. You just go Kincaid, Samuel, and Shakir. Yeah. Hallelujah.
Matt, you know what it is?
So you're investing nothing. You're going all in on, yes, Josh Allen's expensive, right? You're getting Josh Allen, certainly Kincaid. You're gonna have to pay up for Kincaid, okay? Who is the number one option in Buffalo? So you're paying up technically for Buffalo's quarterback and tight end. Okay, but you're not have to give a first round pick. Nope. Second round pick. Nope. Third round pick. Nope. Right? You can still get these guys, in the early mid rounds, and then you can wait till the end of the draft to get Samuel and Shakir. And then now you've triple stacked Buffalo, and all that needs to happen is Keon Coleman is disappointing. Keon Coleman is Jordan Matthews. Keon Coleman is Josh Doxson. Keon Coleman is N'Keal Harry. I mean,
yeah, I saw it coming from a mile away.
And I could go on and on. I could go on for as much time as we have in this show. I can go on. Izzy Terrace Marshall. I can go on and on and on.
There's a lot of statistical similarities between what he did in college and what Kelvin Benjamin did in college. So keep that in mind. I mean, and I look at it like this. Everyone's talking about the targets for Stephon Diggs, 140. You know what I mean? Like, that's great. In real life football, there are two things that matter: first downs and then touchdowns. First you get the first downs, then you get the touchdowns. That's all that matters. And when I ask myself, who's going to be the guy on third down? Because Stephon Diggs has led that team in first downs for 4 straight seasons, right? So who's going to be the guy? In my opinion, Dalton Kincaid. The guy had absolutely crazy sure hands, right? The only drop he had was Josh Allen threw him a pass at 7,000 miles an hour from about 5 feet away, which he does sometimes. Right? Just absolutely punctured one of his kidneys with a fastball for no reason. But for the most, like, he went through about
he'll
10
do that.
Games, yeah, with like his catch rate through like 10 games was like 90%. So like I think that he's going to be the guy. When you're the guy on third downs, man, good things happen. So, it's not only the vacated target, it's those vacated first downs that has me really excited about Kincaid.
And the Scott Fish Bowl does have a first down bonus. And a first down bonus that is like tripled for tight ends. So we're not saying you have to get Kincaid in the Scott Fish Bowl, but you really need Kincaid in the Scott Fish Bowl. That's the reason why you may wait around on your second quarterback or a running back, because you should be drafting Kincaid. We talked about you could draft Trey Benson later. We talked about you could draft Blake Corum later. We talked about, the 49ers have Christian McCaffrey. Do you think the 49ers, though, are teed up to regress based on how things went last year? Things went so well. They were very healthy. They were one of the healthiest teams. They had great continuity from year to year. In the NFL, the National Football League, that's just not the norm.
Right. And it's kind of a double-edged sword here, because on one hand, They were so efficient, right? That I don't think the efficiency can stay. But on the other hand, they actually threw, depending where you look, either the fewest pass attempts or second fewest pass attempts of any team. So on the flip side, I could see a world where maybe with more volume, people stay alive. But my opinion is this: McCaffrey, I'm drafting. The guy that I'm staying away from, and people hate to hear it because he's so cool, he's so funny, tight end university. But George Kittle scares the heck out of me. Every year, he's a unicorn. He's one of the few guys that can break off big plays. But if you take that team played 19 games, including the playoffs. If you take the games where everyone was healthy, George Kittle only had more than 3 catches 3 times. One of those games he had 3 catches and scored 3 touchdowns, which is fantastic. But a lot of these games when they're just beating up on teams, he goes out and does nothing. And in a league where I have to set a lineup, I hate George Kittle. In a league in best ball, I love George Kittle because it's like, at any given time he can score a 60-yard touchdown, right? Or 3 touchdowns or whatever. But in a league where I gotta set a lineup, I sit there, I'm like, is this week does Christian McCaffrey score 7 touchdowns against the Cardinals? Or is it going to be George Kittle that scores all 7? It's like you don't know who's going to do it and what it's going to look like. So he's the one that scares me. The rest of them I'm in on just because I think that they are highly efficient players. And again, I talked about it earlier. When you have a fullback and a blocking tight end, Charlie Warner and Kyle Juszczyk combined to play 70% of the snaps, and they had 20 combined targets, Matt. So like when you have those guys on the field, it's fine. But again, if they want to use Ricky Pearsall, that could muddle things up too if they want to go 3 wide receivers. But for me, the consolidation is what I like. Kittle scares me, man. He scares me, dude. He ruins all my spreadsheets with his lack of volume and lack of everything. But the points are there at the end of the year. It's just, I don't like how we get there and how every once in a while he has 1 catch for 7 yards. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, the managed league drafting of wide receiver 3s frustrates me the most. This is the thing I always see, right? I'll pull up a friend's fantasy team, and I'll be like, is this best ball? He'll be like, no, this is a managed league. And I'm like, okay, so why did you draft Ricky Pearsall?
Why are you drafting Odell Beckham Jr.?
What are you doing? Why are you drafting fringe wide receivers? You need to draft 0 fringe wide receivers in a managed league. What are you going to do? You're going to start them? When? How? In what world? This player will. I mean, do you want to bet? So I have all these side bets with these friends that they will drop player X before they start him. Right? Yeah, you're going to drop him before you start him. And if you start him out of spite just to win the bet, well, okay, then you're cool.
Then you're a jerk. Yeah, you're gonna lose the league. Is what you're gonna do.
I mean, go ahead. Start Ricky Pearsall. Go ahead. In
our mind.
Go ahead. Draft Keon Coleman. Go ahead. See what happens. Go ahead. And the argument there is, week 1, we got to wait for week 1 and see what he does week 1. I'm like, you think he's going to do something week 1? What? You're drafting Keon Coleman because you're hoping that he works his way in over time, right? There's a lot of guys I like late. I love fringe wide receivers. We'll talk about a couple of my favorite fringe wide receivers later. Bo Melton, John Mechie. I love these guys. But what are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, in a managed league, if you're very thin at wide receiver, I can see someone drafting a Josh Palmer just because he is the de facto number 1, and they do think they can start him week 1, and that's fine, and that's a stopgap solution. Like you were very weak at wide receiver, and it's actually very smart. If you're looking at all these fringe guys with very hard to project target shares, the guy to go with would actually be Josh Palmer in that particular situation. But, time and time again, I see wasted roster spots in these managed leagues where they feel like they have too many running backs. They can't draft another running back. It doesn't make sense. And they can't have all running backs on their bench. And they just feel this need to take a shot on some wide receiver at some point, and there really is no rhyme or reason to do that. If you go into a week 1 with a managed league with 0 bench wide receivers, that's not a big deal.
Right. I truly believe, Matt, that it's the overlapping terms of wide receiver 3 in fantasy and wide receiver 3 in real life, where people are like, oh yeah, the wide receiver 3 on the 49ers. The 49ers are good. So the wide receiver 3 is good. So wide receiver 3, it all makes sense. Whereas the reality is that if you go and look at the wide receiver 3s in fantasy, the top 36 wide receivers, the wide receiver 36 is terrible. We're talking about like Gabe Davis. Like, it's not a player you can actually use. And if you take all the actual NFL teams, the 3 wide receivers from those teams, that's like 100 dudes. Like the reality is most teams have 1, maybe 2 fantasy relevant players. In fact, last year, again, this is from Pro Football Focus's numbers, no team in the league had 3 players all get 100 plus targets. And the year before last, no team had 3 players all get 100 plus targets. You're getting 1, maybe 2 fantasy relevant players from each team. There's more teams that had 0 players get 100 targets than there are teams have 3. The Patriots target leader last year had 70 targets. Their catch leader was their catch leader last year was Zeke Elliott with 51. Right? Like, you just got to take certain teams and throw them away, and you got to take wide receiver 3s, known wide receiver 3s, especially on a team with a fullback. Are you kidding me? And get rid of them. You don't need them.
Drafting Ricky Pearsall. Listen, man. I like Wan'Dale Robinson. I think he's a value. We talked about Elijah Moore. I love Michael Wilson. Right?
Yeah.
There's all these guys. Marvin Mims.
Right.
Like these guys. Really, really like them. Incredible. It's why best ball is so great, because you could take advantage of these guys in best ball leagues, and those are all the picks you should be making in a best ball league, especially in a tournament. You get a couple running backs early, and then it's just all wide receivers. You can finish out the last 8 picks of an underdog draft could be all wide receivers, and you're feeling great. And again, you listen to this show, and you have this bevy of choices, right? All the way through to Bo Melton and John Mechie, as we talked about. Yeah. But in a managed league, I mean, it's hard, I think, for most people to really comprehend and internalize how different those 2 leagues are. The setting of your lineup and making pickups every week versus set it and forget it, and the computer is optimizing your lineup. When you look at the NFC, though, you look at the Cardinals, you look at the 49ers, like, how do you see that division playing out?
Yeah, I mean, again, the Cardinals in this case would be the Steelers. Like, I like the idea of it. I think Jonathan Gannon's going to turn that defense over within a year or 2, and the offense should be fine. But it's just I don't know how they can compete with the 49ers right now.
They're making the playoffs, though.
Right.
I mean, Cody Carpentier came on here and he said they're going to the Super Bowl. The Cardinals going to the Super Bowl.
I would, boy, would I enjoy that. Just
it would
for
be
all
great.
all the casual NFL fans that were like, Kyler Murray's playing the video games. Can you believe it, dude? It's like, oh my God.
So selfish.
He'd be first in the chow line if we were in NAM. It's like, dude, shut up. Like, this guy, dude, he showed, not to mention there's all these guys that are getting in trouble at, going out late at night, getting in trouble, doing whatever Rashee Rice is doing. Isn't it better staying home playing video games? Isn't that much, much better? Like, wouldn't we like that a lot more? Like, Baker Mayfield's at a baseball game and he shotguns a beer and crushes a can on his head, and everyone's like, yeah, that's my quarterback. Kyler Murray's at home with his family playing video games, and everyone's like, can you believe this kid? It's just like, what a world we live in, dude, of hard-o bros that just can't, they can't put it all together. So for me, I would love the Cardinals to do it. This division, I think, is going to be decided by fragility, right? Like, is there a more fragile team? Actually, sorry, the Jets are the most fragile team in the world with Aaron Rodgers and Tyron Smith and Mike Williams. But one of the second most fragile team has got to be the Rams, right? Like, if you lose Stafford, it's over. If you lose Cooper Kupp, it's over, right? If you lose Puka, I mean, it's just they're very top heavy team in my opinion. Whereas with the 49ers, Ayuk gets hurt or Debo gets hurt, the train keeps rolling. They got hurt last year. Both of them got hurt last year, and the team went to the Super Bowl. So I think fragility could be the deciding factor for those guys. And then with the Seahawks, it boils down to one question: do you like Geno Smith or not? Right? And I'm not quite sure I do. Exactly. It's like Geno Smith murmur. I don't know. I like what they're doing. Like, it's so funny. They got rid of Shane Waldron, and they looked around at the stuff he left behind. It's like your roommate leaves, and you look at the stuff he left behind, and you're like, what is this? What are all these tight ends here? Why did Shane have all these tight ends in his room? let's let Colby Parkinson and let's let these guys leave because we have 3 wide receivers and Noah Fant. I'm like, what is all this stuff, right? It's like, so now they bring in Grubbs, who was with Washington and knows how to use 3 wide receivers, which is nice. But I mean, it all boils down to Geno. What do you think, Matt? Geno? I never draft him. I just never feel the urge to be like, Geno, yeah, this.
I think that DK Metcalf is on my do not draft list. So I don't want any DK Metcalf. I don't think that it's ever going to happen for DK Metcalf. I think that his career stalled perpetually after year 2, and it's never gotten off the ground. And with guys like this, the rope slips through their hands, right? They've got very moist hands like Deshaun Watson. And why? It's too early. It's too early for this. So, you look up, the guy's 29 and it's never happened, right? He's never put it together the way you wanted him to put it together. It's like, what happened to this guy? I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah.
But it happens over and over
candy
again.
for breakfast every day?
It's just he's clearly better than Devontae Parker. Okay, I'm not saying he's Devontae Parker. I never said he's Devontae Parker, right? But like, he's falling short of even Demaryius Thomas.
Right.
He's falling short. Think about that for a second. So what is the big difference between him and Cortland Sutton? It's starting. They're starting to converge, these two guys, and it's not clear to me that he's going to be the target leader. Jackson Smith and Jigba could step up and be the target leader there. And every year, Tyler Lockett's one of the most underrated wide receivers in fantasy. So what am I going to do? How could I this is a Geno Smith-led offense with Kenneth Walker and a team that just invested in Zach Charbonnet going up against the 49ers. I mean, what are you going to do? How can you pay the price? The DK Metcalf brand is it's too strong still. Like, there's too much residual, explosiveness and wow factor that he has put together in his career, supporting his ADP, but not actually fantasy points supporting it. And it's one thing if that guy that's being supported by, flash paper, if he has a quarterback and he has a lack of target competition, right? If his third receiver was, Demarcus Robinson or something like the Rams, like, okay, right? But it's not, right? He's got 2 other guys that can command targets just as well as he can. So, I mean, he had 66 catches last year, dude.
Right. It's not cutting it. And I'll tell you, JSN, that's the guy we're buying. And I'm actually using a philosophy of yours going back to 2017. There's a podcaster by the name of Matt Kelly. Some people call him the Podfather. And he said, there's this guy we like. His name's Chris Godwin. We believe in the talent. We believe in the player. We don't like the situation right now because they have Mike Evans on the outside and they have Deshaun Jackson on the other side. But there will come a time when that player isn't every down player. And when that happens, it's wheels up. And then as Deshaun Jackson and Adam Humphries were gone, laser show, right? So that's where we're at with JSN. It's the same formula. It's like DK Metcalf is the Mike Evans, except he's not as good as Mike Evans.
No, he's not. That's the thing. Everyone wants him to be. But year in, year out, look at the air yards. It goes down for 4 straight years. He's been leaking air yards.
Right. And then Tyler Lockett is Deshaun Jackson. And the problem there is that Deshaun Jackson was a guy that would go out and get himself hurt, whereas Tyler Lockett is probably the best player in the history of the league at avoiding hits. It is incredible, his ability to not get popped out there, right? Like, he's making business decisions left and right. Like, going down, he'll go down. If it's a 3rd and 10 and he's about to get hit, he'll go down after 8. Like, he is taking care of Tyler, which, you know what? I respect it, but That's what's led to the longevity for him, and that's what we're waiting on. Is we need him to be the part-time player, Lockett, so that JSN can be the full-time player. And someday that will come, and that's when JSN will go crazy. And this is probably your last chance to buy him before that day comes.
Guess DK Metcalf's current underdog ADP.
So wide receivers are crazy steamed. So I'm sure he's going in the second or third round. Is it like 26?
Oh, no way! You didn't do it! No!
Let's go. Where is he? Where's he at?
No! How did you not
I've
know
done
that?
so-
Oh my God!
I've done so many of these.
Let's pull it up. Where is it? It's on here somewhere. There it is.
Look at that.
Look at that ADP. It's up 5 rounds. 5 rounds. Look at that, my friend.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
I can't. What is this? He's up 5 picks. Did I see he's up 5 rounds?
5 picks. Yeah.
I meant 5 picks. He's up 5 picks in the last 30 days on no news, on only JSN looking good news. What is that about?
That 1 year that he was like wide receiver 7 or whatever, he played like AJ Brown. He broke like 17 tackles. And people want that to happen again, but he hasn't been that guy. He's just not getting separation. He's not breaking the tackles. It's a lot of catch and go down, and you can't have a crazy season unless you're doing that. So I don't know. You see pictures of the guy, it makes you want to draft him. I will say, you see the chase down tackle, the highlight of that, and makes me want to draft him sometimes. I'm just like, I got to get that guy, but I don't know. I can't do it at that pick.
Do not draft.
Yeah.
Do not draft DK Metcalf. It's crazy. It's like they forgot that his quarterback's Geno Smith. Now look at his ADP versus Tyler Lockett. Makes no sense. 0 cents. 0.000%.
Tyler Lockett's outperformed his ADP every single year that DK Metcalf's been in the league. I pulled it up the other day.
Yeah. He's one of the 3 most underrated wide receivers in the league, and he may be one of the most underrated wide receivers ever. And it's partly because it took him 4 years to break out. And DK Metcalf went nuclear in year 2. And we'll look back, and that was the 1 year he had more than 15 fantasy points.
Yep.
Now, there are some teams that I am investing in heavily. Seahawks, not one of them. But there are others, like I've mentioned, Jaden Daniels, Washington, another wide receiver 2 on that team. Jahan Dotson, right? Love him in best ball. Would never draft him in a managed league. Just another example, right? A.T. Perry. I like A.T. Perry. Rashid Shaheed. I like these guys. I like both. I like all 3 receivers in New Orleans. I think they're all worth drafting. But if it's not Chris Olave in a managed league, I'm not interested. Tampa. That's another team where I'm drafting a lot of players at value. I mean, think about it. Godwin, even Evans now. There are some years where Evans actually is worth drafting. This might be the last year before he really takes a step backward. But for now, Mike Evans has not shown any signs of regression. Neither has Devontae Adams. So I like Las Vegas. I like drafting a lot of Las Vegas players. What's another team where you're drafting a lot of players from that team?
I just want to say, Matt, we just did a mock. It's gonna be up on Fantasy Alarm. We did it with like a couple like JJ and Rich Rebar on RT Sports. Mike Evans goes at wide receiver 27 off the board.
What?
I swear. I was like, is this a mistake? No, it's that's just where he goes in their rankings or ADP or whatever puts it on the screen. He goes wide receiver 27.
Can't believe
dude, I was losing my mind when he got picked. I was like, where was he? He wasn't even 2 scrolls down on my screen. So there's value to be had out there. So we talked about a couple that I do like. Because, like, again, the game is to bet on the quarterbacks, mentally bet on the quarterbacks and say, who's going to be the beneficiary of that, right? So we talked about the Steelers. If I believe that Russell Wilson can make it happen, then I'm drafting Freiermuth. I'm taking stabs on Roman Wilson. I mean, you look at Nico Collins at Michigan was not good. And then with the Texans early, he was not that good. And then with CJ Stroud, he was incredible. So there's a real possibility that, a guy like Roman Wilson playing in that Harbaugh ground and pound offense where they went undefeated, so they didn't need to throw, and Blake Corum scored 75 billion touchdowns, that they didn't need to throw, but that maybe the team that's been the best at evaluating wide receivers for 2 decades now, maybe they're pretty good at figuring that out. So there's a possibility.
And Calvin Austin.
And Calvin Austin too. I mean, like
everyone's talking about Calvin Austin as the leader of the locker room.
Right.
If everyone respects him. Okay, so let me get. Usually, what happens is the guy that runs the 4.240, he comes in and he actually has just fundamental flaws. He has flaws separating. He has flaws squeezing the football, especially deep. And
talking about John Ross?
Yeah, loses the trust of the coaching staff, loses the trust of his teammates. Anytime a guy runs a 4.2 and is a team leader, a locker room leader, we talked about Deshaun Jackson earlier, right? Okay, Deshaun Jackson was special, but Deshaun Jackson was like the Neymar of the NFL, right? He wasn't the team captain, right? So the idea that they would make a Deshaun Jackson style player, you just don't see that very often.
Right.
You don't see that guy being a team captain. If you have team captain mental acuity, leadership skills, work ethic, and you come into the league running a 4.2 at the combine, how can you not draft that guy in a best ball league?
I mean, best ball and the format I'm especially drafting him is the Scott Fishbowl, because you look at Khalil Shakir and Calvin Austin. If you like one, you should like the other.
Yes.
And in a league like the Scott Fishbowl, where there's returns, right? These guys have an incredible floor because they're either going to be the guys that have the punts and kick returns, or if they're too good for that, then that's even better, right? So they're either going to be those guys and play in the slot, or they're going to be deemed too good to return punts and kicks, in which case they're potentially superstars. So like those guys in a format like the Scott Fishbowl, it's too easy of a pick. It's too easy. There's a floor and a ceiling created by the scoring system.
So your team is the Steelers.
So I like the Steelers.
I'm with you on this, by the way. I'm with you on this. I like all these guys. I love Roman Wilson. I think that Roman Wilson is the most underrated wide receiver in this rookie class. I think Calvin Austin is going to break out all over the place, and he's going to be what everybody wants from a best ball receiver. I think this is another step forward for George Pickens this year. I think that if all those things happen, Russell Wilson's going to exceed expectations as well as Freiermuth, and then Russell Wilson's just going to hold that job all year. The issue is that they're going to lose games, not for anything the offense is doing, but because they're going up against the Bengals and Burrow and Lamar Jackson and the Browns, one of the best all-around teams in the NFL. So they're going to lose a bunch of games, and there's going to be pressure to pivot to Fields. But luckily they have Tomlin, who could say, hey, listen, this isn't a Russell Wilson problem. This is a we're in the wrong division problem.
Right.
So I think I could probably insert the Steelers into my top 3 teams that lately, like I said, I went into an RT Sports draft for the FSGA, and my plan was to stack Pickens, Calvin Austin, and Russell Wilson. If I and hope to get Freiermuth, I couldn't, but hope to get Freiermuth as well. So yeah,
the people
that's
on
just
RT Sports,
but my actions speak volumes there.
They don't even know who Roman Wilson is. He's outside of their top 1,000 players over there because he's just no one's been picking him. I don't know what happened. I picked him the other day, so his ADP might have moved up 500 spots, but he was outside the top 1,000 players. It's just, he's not even registering on their thing. So definitely some values to be had over there. And then, you asked for 3. The Browns is another team. And then like everybody else, I'm taking a stab on who I like from the Packers, right? Because it's like you look at the Texans and look at where Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, and Tank Dell go. All 3 of those guys go before the first wide receiver from the Packers. So, and we know that Jordan Love put up statistically just as good a stats as CJ Stroud. If you can guess it right, and that's the hard part, but if you can guess it right, you're creating a lot of value. And I'm drafting a lot of, honestly, I'm drafting a lot of Christian Watson, man.
It's fine.
It doesn't feel great, but I like the fact that some guys just say, oh, you know what? I'm going to hang out with my buddies in the offseason. I'm going to do whatever. And if my hamstring blows again, it blows again. They're doing this study, right? The NFL paid $4 million to have the University of Wisconsin do a study. He told us that they found out that one of his legs is bigger than the other leg, and that's why this is happening. And they've been working all offseason to get it back to normal. I mean,
So what is he doing? He's just doing like leg extensions with one leg?
I don't know.
One-legged squats?
That seems to be the case, man. And you know what? If it doesn't work, it's some genetic thing, then the football gods just never wanted it to be that way. But we based on what we're hearing, we can't say that he didn't try. We can't say that. You can't blame the player. That's the thing. People want to be like, oh, he stinks, he gets hurt or whatever, but he's doing everything in his power to get it right. So I'm willing to take a shot on that.
And Musgrave too, right?
I have Musgrave over Kraft. I just worry that dude, it's blowing my mind, man, with the Kraft stuff. He had 2 targets until Musgrave went down. Not to mention think about all those injuries that had to pile up for him to max out at 6 targets to Tucker Kraft. Tucker Kraft is a good inline tight end, but doesn't that just mean that he's going to end up being the Goddard to Luke Musgrave's Zach Ertz, right? It's like the way I personally look at it.
Like he's even Goddard though.
I know.
Didn't they both go to like South Dakota State?
So yeah, he went to South Dakota State and Musgrave went to Oregon State.
No, I think that Kraft and Goddard went to the same college.
Yeah. Same school as I think Christian Watson also went there, or he went to North Dakota.
Well, that was North Dakota State.
Same two.
I'm really good at these college games.
You're in there, dude. You're in there.
Yeah, I'm in it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and the thing is, in like a typical redraft league, we have to remember there's 32 teams and there's only 12 tight end ones. And because we like Watson and Reed and Dubs and Wicks and Melton, and then these 2 guys are going to be splitting snaps, the fact of the matter is that there probably is not going to be a tight end 1 coming from the Green Bay Packers. Sorry to disappoint. It's like you can't like Dontavian Wicks and Bo Melton, the 4th and 5th wide receiver on that team, but then also say they're going to have a top 12 tight end. It's Jordan Love would need to pull a 2013 Peyton Manning and throw 55 touchdown passes to get, for that to be possible. And I guess it is possible, but if that happens, the guy that drafted Luke Musgrave isn't the one that wins the league. It's the guy that drafted Jordan Love that wins.
I think of all the victory laps I'm going to do this. I'm already thinking about the victory laps. I'm already thinking, right? The Nico Collins implosion, right? When John Mechie outsnaps Collins when they're both healthy, right? These things where it's like
saying right. You're not going to give me a say right on it. That is a scorching take entirely. I mean, it's all possible, but that's a cooker. Mechie over Nico Collins. I think it's pretty hot.
Do not draft, man. Do not draft.
Nico Collins a lot of money.
If for no other reason, then the ADPs don't add up. With the Texans. So if you're going to put anyone on the do not draft list, let's say, if you're talent agnostic, okay? Talent agnostic, situation agnostic, everything agnostic. What's the one ADP that makes the least sense mathematically? It's Nico Collins' ADP. It's really all the Texans' ADPs. You could argue Tank Dell's probably accurately valued.
I worry about Tank Dell, to be honest. That's what I'm worried about.
I'm not worried about him. If he is anything like we saw last year, then there's nothing to worry about. We know CJ Stroud values him, thinks he's one of the top 3 wide receivers in the whole league. I don't know why the Texans paid Nico Collins what they paid him after they brought in Stephon Diggs. I don't get it, but they did. They think that he is their long-term answer. But this wouldn't be the first time. This wouldn't be the first time that a wide receiver got an extension and was never heard from again. So we'll see.
Are you talking about Kenny Golladay?
We will see. Well, no, he didn't. That was an extent. He was signed as a free agent.
So here's the thing. I like Nico Collins. I do personally like Nico Collins, but my best comparable player for him coming out of school was Kenny Golladay. They're both 3rd-round picks. They ran the exact same 40 time. They're both 6'4". They're both 215 pounds. I mean, they both went in the same spot in the 3rd round, pick like 90, maybe 3 picks off. So that was my upside case for Nico Collins, saying like, hey, this guy could break out the way Kenny Golladay did that one year. But I mean, Comping anybody to Kenny Galladay has you scared. It scares you. It's scary.
We have some really good comps on playerprofiler.com, and that's a good one right there. I've talked enough about Nico Collins. Okay, I've talked enough about him. We're not gonna get into it. I have 10 burning questions for you. 10. That's a lot of burning questions. 10 burning questions for my man Andrew Cooper after this. Hey, why do we partner with the FFPC? Because they have the widest variety of fantasy football formats, and it's the easiest place to find all types of fantasy football contests in the world. What if you want to play for high stakes? Well, they have a $6 million prize pool with their Fantasy Players Championship. They also have way too early best ball leagues that start in February and Dynasty leagues. They have the closest thing to a liquid market for orphans that there is in all of Dynasty. And the FFPC has sponsored us for half a decade because we are actually delivering information that can help fantasy gamers, and they're generating so much interest and bringing in so many new users, casual users even. The FFPC creates a unique experience where you can both compete against the best and make money. Use promo code UNDERWORLD to get $25 off your first team. $25 off your first team at the FFPC with promo code UNDERWORLD. Go get it! The chat has preempted us. I'm so proud of the chat right now. I'm so proud of the chat. You mentioned RT Sports. If you play on RT Sports, there's a few wide receivers that are completely buried. One of them was actually Malik Neighbors, which surprised me. Right. And now he's been moving up. Billy took him in this draft that he was scrolling down the list to find, and I was like, oh my God, there's Neighbors. And then, of course, Billy sniped me. I want Neighbors bad. We talked about the most underrated wide receivers in football: Tyler Lockett, Chris Godwin, Christian Kirk. But this year, that guy could be Malik Neighbors.
I mean, that's what I'm looking for here. And I'll throw another one in there with Brian Thomas Jr. And what I'm looking for are guys that step into a role and get those targets right away. Sometimes it turns into Treylon Burks, right? And it's not incredible. But sometimes when it happens the way it has for these two players, you get a Justin Jefferson. When you trade away Stephon Diggs and say, hey, I know we're asking a lot of you here, Justin, but you need to be the guy from day one. Like Malik Neighbors, they're saying Darius Slayton led that team in snaps last year. My goodness. You need to be the guy from day one. We're putting the franchise in your hands. Brian Thomas Jr. as well. Calvin Ridley is gone. They brought in a slow field stretcher in Gabe Davis. They already have slot guy in Christian Kirk. You got to be the guy outside from day one. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when it works in such a big way that I'm willing to get slapped in the face if it doesn't work. So with those guys, I'm going for it. And RT Sports, man, there again, the rookies are just not, they don't register over there. I don't know what's going on, but like Brian Thomas Jr. goes outside the top 200 players. So for me, that's an easy one. The other one at value that we talked about, Chris Godwin, man, he led that team in receptions last year. He's going back in the slot. Dude, it's just conditions are perfect. The role we talked about so the year before last, he's played 900 snaps 2 years in a row. The year before last, he played 600 in the slot, 300 out wide. Last year, for some reason, they moved him out wide. He played 600 out wide, only 300 in the slot. They've already said, we're putting him back in the slot, back where he lives. It's going to be good. And again, he's healthy. Last year, he was dealing with all sorts of injuries. It's going to be good, man. Chris Godwin, full PPR, Trey Bone.
I mean, yes. I mean, he is probably the most underrated wide receiver in fantasy right now, followed by Malik Neighbors. I think Malik Neighbors outscores Marvin Harrison. Malik Neighbors goes completely nuclear in every way, shape, and form. There's no target competition there. There's not even who's the tight end? Dan Bellinger?
It's going to be Bellinger or rookie Theo Johnson, but I don't know, man. I'm not. That's another game where it's like maybe best ball stabs, but you can't. Darren Waller, him retiring is more meaningful than people think. He got like 70 targets last year.
Neighbors.
And he obviously got hurt. So
Devin Singletary, neighbors. Darius Slayton, neighbors.
Yeah.
Dan Bellinger, neighbors. Neighbors. All roads lead to neighbors.
Right.
Okay. So Hero RB is a good strategy, right? It's always fun. We talked about Bijan. You like Brees Hall. That was seems like hours ago. That was in the early morning hours when we talked about that. But
now it's second breakfast now.
Now the way running backs get discounted and the number of quality running backs that are available in the middle and late rounds even, I'm back on zero RB. Right, every year I'm like, God, I can't do zero RB again this year. Look at Bijan in the middle of the first round. How could I not just grab Bijan and go hero RB? And then I'm like, oh geez, man, I really want Amon-Ra St. Brown. I can't do it. Right, and here I am, and I'm just passing on running back, and then there's guys I love, right there, right in that dead zone. Right, so what do you consider the running back dead zone, and who are the dead zone backs that you're most interested in?
Yeah, and again, the easy way, because it's like, where we draw the line or whatever, the easy way for me to say it is that I do like Joe Mixon, and I think he's the beginning of the dead zone. If I was going to say he was the beginning of the dead zone, then there'd only be one guy in there that I like, and that's Alvin Kamara.
But so just with Joe Mixon,
yeah.
He is the quintessential dead zone running back.
Okay, so yeah, then
he is the definition of a dead zone running back.
There's two guys I love.
No one really likes him. Everyone thinks that he's dusty, but he happened to find himself on one of the best offenses, projecting to get the majority of the touches. And so you run your projections, and he performs so well in projections. But no one actually believes that he has the juice to be a top running back anymore. It just, you can't look past these incredible projections. It's the whole team, man, the whole Texans team, everybody, Schultz, Diggs, Mixon, this whole thing stinks to me. This whole thing stinks. The ADP doesn't add up, right? It's like 2 teams worth of ADP.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. We talked about the Bills. You see what I'm saying? I could draft 3 Bills stacks for what I have to pay to get a double stack of Texans. It doesn't make any sense.
No, that's why. Honestly, I'm out. Like, Tank Dell is the one that scares me on the Texans. But anyway, for Joe Mixon, here's the. It's like if you had an ornament that fell out of the Christmas tree, they almost always smash. This one somehow bounced off a lower branch and landed on the star on top. Right now, when I look at the offenses around this league that are crushing it in yards before contact, right, which is anyone can collect those, it's the 49ers and it's the Dolphins. And what they have is they have an elite left tackle and a fullback. That's what they're doing, right? It's the moment Mike McDaniel got to the Dolphins, he went and got Teron Armstead to be his Trent Williams, and he went to get Alec Engel to be his Pal Juszczyk. And when Bobby Slowick got to the Texans, they already had Laramie Tunsil, who was a Pro Bowler last year, and they brought in Andrew Beck, and now they have Kyle Skoronek, who plays a little fullback too. So they're going to use that elite left tackle and that fullback, and Mixon is going to thrive in that. And when you look at what the Saints are doing with Clint Kubiak, he comes over, and what do? They use their first-round pick on a left tackle, and then they sign 2 fullbacks to the team, in Prentice and another guy, Horvath, right? And they're saying, we're going to do the offense that we signed you to do, which is great news for Joe Mixon. It's great news for Alvin Kamara. And even if Kamara does split to some degree, he's never had a 1,000-yard rushing season. He was on pace for 112 targets last year. I'm not sure what could possibly have changed where they decided, hey, you know what, we're just not going to throw it to Alvin this year. I know that, the offense we run, created the number 1 running back in all of fantasy football. He got a lot of targets in Christian McCaffrey, but we're just not going to throw it to Alvin. We're going to throw it to Kendre Miller or Jamal Williams or somebody. I mean, I could see those guys mixing in on rundowns, but Kamara, I think, is going to destroy that RB18 ADP.
Well, let's just look it up right now. Let's look it up on Player Profiler. We have an ADP tab.
Pull it.
And we can see Alvin Kamara on Underdog. He's going at player 76 off the board. That's down 6. That doesn't make any sense to me.
He was on pace to lead all running backs in receptions. I think he was still second or third, even though he missed 4 games.
Right. So if we look, we'll look right now. I'll put it up on the screen right now. Joe Mixon, he's going off the board at pick 62. So there's Joe Mixon's ADP for everybody to see. There's the chart. Been pretty steady at 62. Yeah. Pretty steady at 62. But then we flip over to Kamara.
Look at that guy. That guy's a star. What is happening?
Right now, if we go over to high stakes FFPC,
look at the sharp gamers are doing.
Look at that. Looky there.
What Chad Schroeder and the boys are doing.
2 rounds earlier, man.
Look at that. Look what Theo and the gang are doing over there. Sharp.
You got it, man. You nailed it. Now, another player on the Saints is Kendre Miller. Kendre Miller is, if you don't get Kamara, don't handcuff Kamara with Kendre Miller. Don't do that. But you miss on Kamara, okay, that's cool. All those same principles are going to help make Kendre Miller super efficient when he's on the field. Which of the second-year running backs that have not yet broken out are you most excited about?
I mean, that's tough because I consider Bijan to have broken out, Breece Hall to have broken out.
Of course, yeah.
Jahmyr Gibbs and Achane are all broken out.
Yeah, they broke out.
So
you gotta go to, and I just said Kendre Miller. I just
you said Kendre Miller. So
sorry. I apologize.
But you've left me one. You've left me one.
I nuked Kendre. I took him off the board.
That's all right though, because there's a guy here that has already carved out a role at the NFL level and is doing it at a higher level than his teammate, who his teammate's still a fine pick too, and that's Zach Charbonnet. I mean, all we can ask for in this world is for a guy to come out and get a role, right? Like Jaylen Warren has a role now. Charbonnet ran more routes last year than Kenneth Walker. Like, that's his job. So for me, when I'm playing this game of, who is on an offense that can move the football, that can potentially have at least half a role, and maybe the full role if somebody gets hurt, that's a guy. So if you take off 9 running backs like you did, and I have to pick one, then that's what I'm going to pick.
Well, you didn't take Evan Hull. You didn't take Roschon Johnson. There's a lot of options you could have taken. You didn't take Zamir White.
You like Roschon Johnson.
What do you mean?
You're a Roschon Johnson guy?
Stop. You didn't know that?
I knew. I mean, it's just the situation is...
Situation's great.
Yeah,
he's got a guy that doesn't want to be an NFL player who just got paid.
I hate when they sign the guy to the exact overlapping contract. Like, at least Khalil Herbert can leave. Roschon is stuck there. If DeAndre Swift hits, then he's pinned in Dynasty.
Come on. If DeAndre
I know. I don't like DeAndre Swift either. I don't like
DeAndre Swift. Yeah. Get out of here.
I don't love him, but it just, dude, rookie quarterback, a lot of weapons. Could be all right. I could be sold.
The offense is going to be surging. I mean, there's going to be the most improved offense in the league this year. And Roschon Johnson, in a vacuum, is a top 25 running back talent in the league, given his size, receiving skills, his ability to pick up blitzes and pass protection, his ability to run between the tackles, trusted inside the 5-yard line, all these things. We talked about Calvin Austin, team leader. He was the team captain at Texas, not Bijan. There's a lot to love about Roschon that is not necessarily captured in statistics. And sometimes I like those guys because, I've seen them. I've been on the field. I've been around. Like I said, I've, met in person very few guys, but I am biased. I'm biased by a few things. I've met Tank Dell. I've seen Tank Dell in person, close up, at the Senior Bowl, so I like him. Michael Wilson, same thing, same Senior Bowl. Luke Musgrave, similar, and Roschon Johnson. So those are my guys that I saw, and I also saw how they carried themselves. I saw how other players revere them. Jaden Reed, same thing. Where they were the ones that were making plays. It was a great Senior Bowl to go to. Tajay Spears was incredible at that Senior Bowl. It lacked quarterback play. I mean, it was the worst Senior Bowl for quarterback play I've ever seen. But those are the guys, when you're in the room with some guys that just exude professional athlete, like Michael Wilson exudes professional athlete. Luke Musgrave, like that's what I expect to see from the next stud tight end. The guy that's, when I looked at him, I was like, oh, this is young Travis Kelce. This is what he looks like.
He's got football blood, Bill Musgrave. Like he's got a football family, which you like to see.
Yeah, and so that's there's a a bias there with those guys. It's very possible they all break out, and I'm proven right about all those guys. But think about it. You go down, there's no surprise. Like when you hear what coaches are saying about Roschon Johnson, and then you hear what Kyler Murray is saying about Michael Wilson, you hear what C.J. Stroud is saying about Tank Dell, you hear what Jordan Love is saying about Luke Musgrave. Well, athleticism matters in athletics, absolutely, but you have to want to translate it. You have to really care. And there's a reason why the Devontae Parkers never hit and the DK Metcalfs are disappointing. They can't just rely on their physical skills. And in a Roschon, and a Michael Wilson, and a Tank Dell, and a Luke Musgrave, I saw guys that have it all, have the whole package, have the athleticism, and have that dog in them, and that they clearly want to be there. And there's just an aura about them. It's hard to explain. It sounds silly, but it's just the way they carry themselves on the field and the way their teammates react around them. It makes you realize, okay, there's a level of respect that these players have for this guy that is something I can't calculate, but I'm going to pay attention to it. And then what happened? These guys surprise you. Tank Dell surprised everybody last year. Right? And Roschon Johnson certainly surprised me with the amount of his reception total. Like, where'd this come from? Like, well, he was behind Bijan. Right? The coaches at Texas told you, but we didn't see it until we saw it. Now, when you look at that quarterback class of that Senior Bowl was bad, but I think that a great way to get value this year in fantasy football is to take advantage of this rookie class. What if this rookie quarterback class, what if they all hit? Like that's the thought experiment I like to do. What if McCarthy and May, and what if they all hit? Like, isn't that a nice source of value, especially in best ball, if you're looking for the next fringier wide receivers, if you're trying to put a chip down on a Pop Douglas, you put a chip down on a Jahan Dotson, betting on this rookie quarterback class.
I did a study on that exact thing this year, this topic, Matt, which is that I went through, yes, I'll send you the article after this. It's over on
fantasylounge.com. Let's share that. Let's put it in the show notes.
I went through to look at hit rates on the quarterbacks, right? And I noticed a very interesting trend, which is that it's actually very rare for the QB 3 or 4 in a class to hit when the QB 1 and 2 both bust. It's rare for the QB 3 to hit when the QB 1 bust. It doesn't happen very often. There's basically over the last 25 years been one example in Jay Cutler where the first 2 QBs both completely whiffed and the third QB hit. But when you go through the history, there are these monster classes. When the QBs 3 and 4 and 5 hit, it almost always coincides with it just being a really good class up and down the board, right? Like the Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning class with the Jalen Hurts was the QB 5 off the board. And when you look at the QBs above him, it was Burrow and Tua and Herbert and now Jordan Love and then Jalen Hurts. So it wasn't that they just found this gem that everyone missed. It's that it turns out that all of them were good, as you're suggesting. So when you go through and look at it, if you want to bet on, and that's why I've been telling people, don't go down and draft this guy at the bottom because you think that these guys are all going to miss, and this is the one good guy. What you want to bet on is that they're all good. And I think it's a very real possibility that that could be the case. And
Pop
if it is
Douglas, Jahan Dotson, Jordan Addison.
Somebody's got to get the ball. Somebody's got to benefit from that. And I look at Jaden Daniels. We look at the upside of a mobile quarterback, right? Virtually any quarterback that runs the ball 90 times and plays the whole season is going to be a QB1. I went through and looked at 16 games and 90 carries. Only one time did that guy not finish as a QB1. It was 2014 Colin Kaepernick. So we get the numbers behind that. All you got to do is run the ball 5 times a game. That's all I need from you. So if Jaden Daniels has a season in college running the ball 186 times, we want that guy. And Drake May has a season with running the ball 184 times. I know it wasn't as exciting as explosive, but if he's willing to punch it in from the 6-yard line,
he will.
Or from the 1-yard line, right, like a battering ram style, then Superflex, absolutely. Right?
Drake May, baby.
Now we're talking about waiting on quarterback and taking 2. If you load up at every position and you grab Jared Goff and say, okay, I got the safe boring guy. Why not take a little upside stab, with my very, very last pick, So don't be surprised when Drake May decides that he's going to run the ball, because that's the guy they drafted.
2 QB, Superflex, do yourself a favor and get Drake May or JJ McCarthy as a 3rd quarterback or a 4th quarterback and just stack them on your bench. Right. Just put them on your bench, and those guys will accrue trade value in a matter of weeks, and you don't need to start them. That's the beauty of drafting a 3rd quarterback or even a 4th quarterback for your bench in managed Superflex and 2 QB leagues. Yeah, we got to go to rapid fire. Oh my God, we got to go rapid fire. Oh my God. What is your favorite front door and back door stacks in best ball?
So
front door stack meaning like stud
early
receiver, stud quarterback, and then backdoor stack, fringe quarterback with a fringe receiver.
I like when I'm at the turns, just going bing bang, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews. I think that Mark Andrews could easily be the tight end 1 in fantasy. And the backdoor stack is also a tight end QB stack, and it's Pat Freiermuth and Russell Wilson.
Oh, that's it. I was going to hope you would say that, man. I hope you would say that. Love it. Oh, we're in rapid fire mode. Okay.
Let's go.
Do not draft list. Give us a guy in the top 50 that's on your do not draft list.
So I got one that I would not draft him if it was the very last round of a best ball draft, and that's Cole Kmet. And it's because Shane Waldron rotates the tight ends, and they have 3 wide receivers, and they have a rookie quarterback. It's the worst possible setup. If Cole Kmet plays more than 75% of snaps for the first time,
I'm interrupting. I'm sorry. That's not a top 50 pick.
Top 50 pick?
Yeah. I've said Nico Collins. Do not draft. Or at least get very little. DK Metcalf, I said do not draft. DK Metcalf, actually, is as sure as I am that Nico Collins is not going to hit, Nico Collins can hurt you in the context of that offense. So I would never totally dismiss Nico Collins and not draft him at all in my underdog portfolio. I'd have something like 3% Nico Collins. With a DK Metcalf, I'm comfortable just saying I want none of him, because in the Geno Smith offense with all that target competition, he actually can't hurt me. So I'm fine not drafting any DK Metcalf. Who would be a guy like that for you?
So I hate to say it and go against you on this one, but it's actually been Tank Dell for me. I think that he's going to be the odd man out when they use the fullback, and I worry that these guys had the tightrope surgery last year. Darnell Mooney and Tony Pollard didn't really come back and look amazing until later on.
Well, you're wrong about that, but that's fine. That's fine. Again, you don't want to.
The beauty of fantasy football is we gonna see.
Yeah, we're gonna see. Yeah, you're wrong, but we're gonna see. We're gonna see about that. Now, give us your favorite boring tight end for best ball.
Hunter Henry.
Oh,
and short and sweet.
I was thinking that because you were saying Drake May. When you were saying Drake May, I was thinking in my head, I was like, man, that's even more fuel for the Hunter Henry as your 3rd tight end in best ball. There it is. Now, what about a sleeper tight end with upside?
Greg Dulcich. And if he doesn't get the job, then Lucas Kroll. That's the thing. One of those guys is going to be the move tight end in that offense, and there's a lot of routes to be run.
What about Jelani Woods?
John, I mean, that's the thing. If you're betting against Adonai Mitchell, which a lot of people are, and you're maybe don't think Josh Downs is an every down player, then somebody has an opportunity to emerge as the second target behind Michael Pittman. Every PPR top 12 tight end last year was either the number 1 or number 2 target on the team. So Woods has that in the range of outcomes.
Not every year. Remember Robert Tonyan?
Not every year.
Not every year. Not every year. No, the thing with Jelani Woods is he could get there with 10 touchdowns, but limited targets.
Yep. You either need 90 plus targets or 10 plus touchdowns. That's going back to Randy McMichael in 2003.
That's right. So the Jelani Woods is the guy that I think can be a 10 touchdown guy.
Okay. I like it.
Yeah. Is there a question that you wished I had asked you today that I didn't ask?
Yeah. You're not going to ask me who my super deep truther is?
Okay, let me ask you that right now. Who is your top truther guy, the guy you're not dropping in Dynasty?
It's still Stone Smart, baby. Stone Cole Smart. If for the Los Angeles Chargers, he converted quarterback to wide receiver. If people aren't, if Hayden Hurst doesn't pan out, it's not going to be Will Disley. It's not going to be Donald Parham. I think this guy could be a baller and come from deep behind. And he did score a 50-yard touchdown last year after we talked about him. So I'm hanging on to Stone Smart, man.
Bold prediction. I'll get you out of here.
Gerald Everett flat out outscores Cole Kmet.
Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.